Hey guys, this is Nick and welcome to my Linux experiment. Well, not specifically about Linux in this video, but more about privacy, and specifically how Google is planning to track you across the web, even though they're renouncing third-party cookies. So let's take a look right after this. This video is sponsored by Safing. They are an open source company that develops the Portmaster, an all-in-one network monitoring solution. It allows you to watch everything that comes in or out of your network and then block or allow the stuff you want to take action on, globally or on a per app basis. Portmaster is free as in free beer and completely open source, and it also has advanced features like filter lists to automatically block ads, trackers or malware, and it can enforce secure DNS over TLS for your whole computer. All these features are easy to access thanks to a simple and legible user interface, and you can download it as a deb or an Arch package. It's also available on Windows if you need it there as well. Safing's Portmaster is still in alpha and looking for users and input. The team is super responsive and you can contact them by mail, on Reddit or directly on GitHub. Follow the link in the description to download Portmaster and give the team your thoughts. Okay, so if you don't know what I'm talking about specifically, Google announced in early March that they would stop using third-party cookies to track you across the internet. So on paper it seems like a good thing, right? If you're using Chrome or if you're using Google products, you might think, hey, now Google is not going to track me as much as they used to, so it's probably a good thing, right? Well, yes and no, because there is another solution that Google is working on that will keep tracking you across the internet, just not using cookies. So what I'm proposing is to talk about what's changing, what's happening, and what the implications of what Google is doing are. Okay, so what's happening really? Well, the method Google was using to track you was using third-party cookies. This meant that every time you visited a website that used the Google Ads network, this website deposited a little cookie for Google, which was not a cookie from the website, but from Google, which is then a third-party cookie. A cookie from the website is a first-party cookie, and a third-party is a cookie that is not from the maker of the website, hence a third-party cookie from Google. So Google deposited all of these little cookies on every website that used the Google Ads network. And basically, it created a nice profile of where you had been, what you had visited, what were your interests, how long you spent on the page, stuff like that. And with that, Google could just sell your profile to advertisers, because advertisers would know what you liked, what you didn't. Google could just sell that data and serve you better targeted ads. So on paper, this might seem like a good thing, right? You're seeing more relevant ads. You're seeing targeted ads to what you like, to what you're not seeing ads to what you don't like or what you didn't click on. It seems like a nice feature. The problem is not really in that is the ad relevant or not. It's because this tracking happened without the user's knowledge. For a long time, people, when they accessed the website, automatically opted into cookies, including third-party cookies, and they were forced to be tracked without their consent. Some regulations tried to hamper that, hence the GDPR, but those things just really made websites make giant pop-ups that were super annoying that users just had to click on accept all to dismiss, and by that GDPR turned like not knowing about cookies into consenting to all cookies without reading. Basically it was a shit show and, well, it helped making something that people didn't know about, which was tracking through cookies, into something that people involuntarily consented to, which is even worse. But all of this will be gone. Well, at least it will be gone in 2022, I think, which is when Google will remove this functionality from Google Chrome. If you're using Safari or Firefox, mostly you won't have to worry about this. These guys have already disabled third-party tracking cookies, so you should not be able to be tracked cross-websites using these cookies. So on paper, it seems like a good thing. Like Google is doing a right thing for privacy. They are not tracking you across websites. They're not storing any data on you, right? Well, it's more of a reactionary move. Google, through Chrome, is the last to implement this thing. Firefox, Safari, they've all worked, and maybe other browsers based on Chromium, they all worked on removing access to third-party cookies. Google is the last one to do it, and basically they have to, because if they are the only ones that don't do it, and since they're the only ones making so much money on their ad business, they would look like bastards. They have to do it. It's just a reactionary move. They have to. And this doesn't mean that Google won't be able to track you at all, because when you use Google's websites, you're using first-party cookies, the cookies that Google deposited on their own website. So if you're using Google Docs, Gmail, if you're using YouTube, even Google Search, Then you have cookies stored on your browser that Google can use through Chrome. They're not third-party cookies, they have access to them, they're not disabled. So if you use Google services, you're still tracked. And if you use mobile applications on iOS or Android that use the Google Ads network, these apps will also track you and send this information to Google. So Google is not completely breaking their ad business, but they're removing a huge part of it, because Chrome is the most mainstream browser with the most market share that the most people use. So if they can track you through Chrome, how are they going to keep making relevant ads and how are they not going to lose money? Well, Google is not stupid. They know that half of their revenue, at least from the latest quarterly report, half of their revenue is coming from ads. So they're not about to throw that with the bathwater. They have another solution. Now, this new thing is called FloC, for Federated Learning of Cohorts. This thing is basically tracking you all over again, just not using cookies. Basically, Google already knows what a website talks about through SEO and through the data that people willingly submit to Google when they create a website, or the metadata, or the Google Search Console stuff. Google knows what a website is about. If you visit certain websites or certain articles, Google will know what they're about. And through Chrome, they're going to store that browsing history, and they're going to create another profile of you just using Chrome and not specific cookies that are placed on the website. But this data is not linked to a personal profile. It's going to be used to put you into cohorts. So cohorts are basically groupments of people that share the same interest. For example, Google might create a automobile interest group, which is an automobile cohort. People who read stuff on automobiles, who look for automobile stuff, who look for cars and want to buy cars, they're going to be put into that cohort. If you look for Linux a lot on the internet, you might be put into a Linux cohort or a technology cohort. If you look for cooking, you're going to be put into a cooking cohort. Any user can be put into multiple cohorts. If I have visited a ton of Linux websites and cooking websites, I will be put in these two separate cohorts. And that's what the difference is with the current model. Currently, Google is selling individual profiles. Like they're basically telling advertisers, not in these exact terms, but if you're willing to sell a car, we have 3,035,000, 100,000 millions of people that are interested in cars. Now they're going to tell the advertisers, we have a cohort for people who are interested in cars. You're not buying individual profiles segmented on age, segmented on other things. You're just buying into the car cohort. So basically you're telling, I want to put my ad for people who want cars. And Google say, hey, I have a cohort for that. It's the cohort. It's the car cohort. You can place your bid on that. And then when you visit websites that talk about cars, Google will know that you're in that cohort because you're using Chrome and they know that. And they're going to place you the ad that has the highest bid from all the ads that have been placed on that cohort. It's basically the same ad bidding technology that exists already, but targeting cohorts or groups of people instead of targeting individual profiles segmented on their individual personal qualities. For example, their age, their gender, their stuff like that. Of course, this doesn't change at all the fact that Google will still keep collecting data from its first-party websites. So Google Search, Google Mail, YouTube, everything like that. They'll still be collecting data on that and storing into individual profiles to enrich the various profiles that you have. So what does that change? Well, in terms of ad experience, if such a thing already exists, like which ads you're viewing, it's probably not going to change much for you. If you were seeing targeted ads, you'll probably still see targeted ads. Using the federated learning of cohorts, Google will now just know what interests you have, but not using cookies. That's the only thing. And just keep in mind that this technology will only work on Chrome. If you're using Firefox or Safari, there is no third-party cookie collection here either. So this data is not going back to Google right now. Google can't track you if you're using Firefox or Safari, at least not on third-party websites. But if you're using Chrome, and if you're sticking to Chrome, then this means that the data that Google stores on you will still be a little bit more anonymous, because they're not going to store a specific user profile about you, well, they'll still do that through the Google services, but through the third-party websites that you're visiting, they won't have a personal profile with personal data. They will just have a vague idea of what you've consulted, what you've browsed, and they will be able to store you into various cohorts without having much personal info linked to that. So that's why they build this as a privacy-first solution for tracking across the web, because it's not linked to a personal profile, it's just your browsing habits, but anonymous. Okay, so in conclusion, if you're not using Google Chrome already, nothing will change for you. You're still not tracked using third-party cookies because most other browsers already disable that thing, and so you're still gonna see the same ads that you were seeing, and if you're using Google's first-party services like Gmail, Google Search, YouTube, etc., Google still is gonna have a profile about you that it's gonna use to sell ads and targeted ads, even on third-party websites that use the Google Ads network. If you were using Chrome, you will still be tracked, but not using cookies, you'll be tracked in a more anonymous way through the Cohorts thing. Nothing really is going to change in terms of the ads you're going to see, but you can know that the data that's being collected on you is not that personal anymore. But in the end, the most important thing is that this move is going to help Google in the long term, because this move only works if you're using Chrome and only gives back data to Google. Before, third-party cookies were used by a wide variety of ad networks. Facebook were using them, and other smaller ad networks were also using those cookies. Since no browser will support those, these ad networks will have no way of gathering that data, of giving that data back to the network to create the user profile on you. Only Google will be able to create a user profile through Cohorts because you're using Chrome and Google owns the browser. Every other ad network that doesn't own a browser that people use are going to be unable to use that method because it's not using cookies that are widely available through the website. They can just gather that info and send it back to the ad network. Now it's something that's using the browser to collect the data. The website has nothing to do with this. The website is just the recipient that gives the data to the browser. Other ad networks don't have that. They don't have browsers. Facebook doesn't have a browser. They can't implement that kind of tracking. Which means that in the end, if these other ad networks don't find another solution, well, they're going to lose market share because they're not going to be able to serve targeted ads, or at least their targeted ads will be way worse than what Google is offering. Which means that this move helps Google keep or increase their monopoly on web ads. So it's really good in terms of privacy because, well, Google will still have personal profiles because most people still use Google services, but for people who try to de-Google their lives, they're not going to be tracked across websites without their consent or without having to read enormous pages of privacy policies to disable certain cookies or not. This is good. But it's also going to increase Google's monopoly on internet monetization, and that's a terrible thing, because as Google has proved time and again, when you give them a monopoly, they act like bastards. And that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't hesitate to like or dislike if you didn't. You can also subscribe and turn on notifications to receive more videos like this one. If you really enjoyed the video and you want to help support the channel, you can join my amazing Patreon subscribers and YouTube members and get access to a weekly patroncast and the right to vote on the next topics I'll cover. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!